it's possible to start taking care of this far sooner than if you try and wait to work out what the ultimate solution is for everything. And let's say that we try 5 or 6 things out, and 1 or 2 of them work better than others. Okay, so now we're 10 years down the line, and we've tried things out in small areas. Well, hey, now we're in a position that we can start rolling those ideas out that do work to other parts, and be risking far less capital to revise those that don't work. And so it's really a situation of now priority setting, mobilization, realizing what you folks want to do, and where we can help, we will. If you have something and you want to push funding through, and for some reason it seems to be difficult to motivate that publicly, we'll help you work out how we can do it through private investment. We want to help you do this. And it's very exciting, like I say, to be part of it. And I think you're going to start seeing workable solutions very soon, with so many people coming together and trying to make it work. So thanks very much for having me here as well.
You're talking about modular solutions that are making significant progress from a regulatory standpoint, that are also demonstrating things that could be more replicable.
What I'm saying is that we already kind of agree that dealing with things in terms of one centralized system is going to be unaffordable. Let's accept that fact. Let's start looking at how we can deal with the problems now, set priorities. I've seen the map with the areas that we need to hit the greatest parts of TMDL. 100% here, 90% there. Let's set priorities. We have technologies, we have fantastic brains here. We can start making it work. Let's deal with it in smaller increments, so everybody's not so phased about the economic commitment that would need to be made. And that's how we go about this.
Is that correct, Ken, that a big regulatory concern is to show that progress is being made, that the Cape can't continue to study, it has to be doing something? Is that a fair? How does the regulator think?
Yeah, and so I'm mulling that over, and Eric's comment and the other comments that have been made sprinkled through the day about what we've heard from regulators over it. So I guess I put it all together by saying there's 2 things that there's kind of a regulatory impulse to one. One is certainty. You want to be sure it's going to work. And 2, and so I'm not at all surprised to hear that somebody said, well, what if the oysters die, or what if the inlet closes? I can easily picture those comments. So one is certainty, and then the point you just made is another. So I think what's happening is we're slowly coming to the realization, and at various speeds within the different organizations, that this insistence on certainty is getting in our way sometimes, and that what we need to do is be willing to take a little more risk where that's needed to get to a much better solution overall.
Manageable risk.
Right, not unlimited risk,
Right.
but more risk. So, and that realization is seeping in. We're a large organization. We have 700 people in the Boston office of EPA. We're one of many offices. We have at Mass DEP, there's 700 or 800 people, and we're different agencies. So I'm not at all surprised that there are people coming to public meetings saying things in a different way than I might, and DEP's not even in the room, I don't think, today, right? So I guess to the question earlier about what advice to give, I guess one is we've all got to be in the room together. That's really critical. We've all got to have some patience with each other as we're figuring out this, and we're all moving. We're all moving, hopefully, in the same direction. But don't take one comment as, all right, it's hopeless. The agencies, especially at higher levels, are very, very committed to changing the way this all works in a way that gets us to better, more sustainable solutions. But the impulse is always going to be there for certainty. So the more we can do on, let's test things out and let's start producing data. Let's develop what, if it doesn't work, we can try this. So there's a really important conversation that we need to keep having.
Well, it's a delight to be here, so I'd first like to make that comment, so thank you for the invitation here. I'm excited by what's in the room, in the sense of there seems to be a reasonable diversity, although we are missing some key sectors, apparently. Not apparently, we are missing them. So you've got the right fabric, if you like, raw material here. We've got diversity, we've got willingness and community commitment here, so that's an excellent start. We've got a plan on a sewering, which gives you a business as usual sort of reference point. And so that's something else that's really needed when you're looking at alternative options. It's good to be able to align that to something else. What I'm a little concerned about is just lurching from trying to solve one problem and then, hey, 10 years, 20 years down the track, you've got another. And by that I mean, resolving a nitrogen issue, you may end up, you've got, hey, a source water issue, phosphorus issue, a pathogen issue, and heaven knows what other sorts of issues. So I think you've heard from a number of us this morning, particularly, I think, the need to look at this as a whole system. So I think that's what Ken was referring to before, and others have said that. We really need to wrap this up as a total package. And so you've got this hot zone, and I'll call it that, where you've got relatively dense members, not dense on the top here, I mean densely populated areas, requiring apparent sewering as a solution. Well, that to me is a huge opportunity to look first at that zone. So taking a stepwise approach. I can point to the little poster up here, and one of my preferred options could be, and this is again the wrong thing to say that there is a single solution, but one of the considerations ought to be looked at if you're considering putting in a sewer. Why not consider putting in the so-called smart sewer, which is one of these vacuum or pressure sewers that can be more inexpensively put in place, just taking, for example, a black water component from homes. And so start looking at those with a suite of other options and looking at the whole sociological, economic and environmental issues together when you're looking at those options. And I hope that EPA can work with you in helping to make those evaluations.
So we saw a lot of technologies, and I noted that almost all of them were product technologies, and it's kind of close to my heart because I'm a product designer, but I think all of them require new services. So I would add that as you develop this green plan, think about who's going to provide those services, and that's going to be a long-term recurring cost to the tax base, but revenue source for businesses. But they're not service providers that exist right now because they're new things. It's changing filters or dealing with urine or dealing with feces, collecting that. So it's something that needs to be thought about in combination of whatever technology is pursued. And I'd add to that, to me, a service gives me some certainty because that means I have somebody whose livelihood depends on the continued success of an oyster farm or of a nitrogen barrier. And if their job depends on that, they'll probably can make sure that it continues to work or fix it if it breaks. So I think that gives me some sense of certainty, even if the technology itself is less proven than a traditional approach.
So the two real design firms here, I thought, Julie Beth, it was a great thing, like the square into the, because I've had this image that, is America capable of anything anymore? You look at Sweden and Australia and what the kinds of leapfrog advances they're making, and how can we do something more sustainable and innovative in this country? So if we were like a war zone and we got our generals, here, and we said you have 3 months to solve this problem, well, they would solve it. We know that. So, what would be some of the first things that as consultants you would say, you're confronted with this crisis, what do you start with? How do you start to, because, I know in Cincinnati they had some good ideas but no plan. So how do you start to, both of you, Paul and Julie Beth, how do you start to build a plan?
There are all kinds of ways to start to build a plan. I would say that the first thing, and this has been consistent across the board, is do you really have a vision statement? And I know that sounds ridiculous and hokey. I am a planner after all. But have you defined your problem? What is the desired, and then your desired outcome? Have you really written that down to the point where you can start to say how the pieces fit in? I think the other piece that's really critically important is to start to look for money under rocks, things like the tax credit. How could we, could we do a revolving loan fund? Could we do leverage the tax credits for something else? What are possible sources to fund permeable reactive barriers? And can we get concurrence that there'll be an allowance to do that? And then you start to look at what are the steps that have the fewest implementation barriers that we could get done the quickest as a pilot project to demonstrate action and have something to go take pictures of and take people to. It is vitally important. So it's sort of a search and destroy mission through the work that you've been doing, including lawsuits and everything, facilities plans and everything else, to find those pieces that you can put together. It's also about, and this is, I loved your presentation, you don't even know how many different ways that was relevant to what we do in this nutty business. Thinking about who can be the service providers, who could make money off of a different option. We know who makes money off of sewers, and that's cool, but who could make money or develop economic opportunity out of this, and where do we find them? Service providers is a huge thing. We have a model for that. It works really well in Alabama and Tennessee, and it's kind of embarrassing in New England that we keep looking to them as an example, but there are great jobs that can come out of a decentralized approach, the same way we do get great jobs out of a sewer plant with good trained operators. That economic model is there. You have to redefine it because it's quite different.
Well, I think if I was going to try and assess what the best way to start sailing this is, to consider first of all what access to financial resources you realistically have, in what kind of time frame, and then look at how those resources will be able to roll out across the area that you're considering. So you have an issue which is this large. It can be decomposed into smaller issues, each with their own impacts and priorities. Then you can make decisions on where to start investing that funding, wherever you get it from, for the greatest feedback benefit. What you'll see is that as you start getting wins, it will become easier and easier to gain additional funding. One of the first things you need to do is provide a working model at some kind of achievable scale. And that model absolutely encapsulates all the things that have just been mentioned here. It encapsulates providing the services around what's required by this new infrastructure. It also entails considering the larger picture beyond just sewer. It's about how does this fit in with other infrastructure needs, other societal needs, other environmental needs. This should all be considered for one small piece first. So you say, hey, we have a plan for this part. We know we want it to remain a coastal community. We don't want to create opportunities for mega development. We know that we want to provide green jobs and stimulate the economy. What's the opportunity to do this? And if you can show a working model first, where, like you say, the private sector can get involved, and people can get involved and create opportunity out of what's currently considered as a challenge, you'll see replication very quickly after that. But the problem at the moment you have is it's just too big. First of all, it needs to be decomposed to something which is manageable. And just one point that I really want to emphasize, that transfer of new services, so the training which is required, how that will build up, that isn't something that needs to be necessarily absorbed by a tax base. The private sector is more than willing to absorb that. I haven't really had time to convey to you fully what NSU is about, but we are already a working, responsible management entity. We are a green, decentralized utility. We operate about 80 systems in Minnesota at the moment, mix of technologies, wetlands, ASPs, all kinds of different technologies. Some we own, some we don't own. We operate all of them, some we built, some we didn't build. The point is, we're providing jobs in these communities to operators, we're doing it in the right way, we're choosing which technologies we operate based on their environmental benefits. We know that it works at this scale. We are creating utilities which have comparable user rates to large-scale utilities. The model isn't in question. The model works, it exists, there's access to financing. It's now about looking at Falmouth and working out how we can make it work for this town. And that's where I think the priorities need to be set.
I'm a member of the committee, and I hope you can help me with the following. What do we have to do to show that something works? I mean, I'm a design engineer myself, and we all know that bagging toilets work. PO has shown that permeable reactive barriers work. And they're way beyond the prototype stage. Some of these are already production items. At the other extreme is what Eric alluded to, of God closing the channel. You could have something to full scale around one of the estuaries, and then something could fail. So, and besides, that's a catch-22. By definition, then, it's not a demonstration. You've done what you're doing. So, at what level do you accept mathematical extrapolation, or what constitutes knowing that it works as far as meeting the TMDL?